Hotel horror story. Jessica Morrison should have trusted her first instinct when she pulled up to the Riverside Hotel. The three-story brick building looked wrong. Not abandoned exactly, but neglected in a way that suggested something more sinister than simple disrepair. Ivy crawled up the walls like grasping fingers. Several windows were dark despite it being only 9 p.m., and the neon vacancy sign flickered with a rhythm that seemed almost like Morse code spelling out a warning. But Jessica was exhausted. She'd been driving for 14 hours straight, fleeing a bad breakup in Boston and heading to her sister's place in Nashville. The Riverside Hotel sat on a lonely stretch of rural Virginia highway, and the next town was another 90 miles away. Her eyes were burning, her back ached, and she could feel herself nodding off at the wheel. Just one night, she told herself, grabbing her overnight bag from the passenger seat. Get some sleep, leave at dawn. The lobby smelled of mildew and something else, something sweet and rotten that Jessica couldn't quite identify. Behind the front desk sat an elderly man whose name tag read Earl. His skin had a waxy, yellowish quality, and when he smiled at Jessica, she noticed his teeth were stained dark brown. "Welcome to the Riverside Hotel," Earl said, his voice a wet rasp. "Checking in." "Yes, just for one night. Do you have any rooms available?" Earl's smile widened. "Oh, yes. Plenty of rooms. Plenty of vacancies." He pulled out an ancient guest registry, actual paper, not a computer. "Most people don't stay here no more. Not since the incident." Jessica's exhaustion was making her irritable. What incident? "Best not to talk about it," Earl said, pushing the registry toward her. "Room 237 is available. Nice room. Quiet. Most of the time." Jessica signed a name, too tired to process the strangeness of his words. She paid cash. The hotel didn't take cards, naturally, and accepted the heavy brass key Earl handed her. "Checkout is at 11 a.m., Earl said, though most guests try to leave earlier. Much earlier." He chuckled at his own joke, a sound like gravel in a garbage disposal. Room 237 was on the second floor at the end of a hallway that seemed to stretch impossibly long. The carpet was a faded burgundy pattern that might have been elegant 50 years ago but now looked like dried blood. Wall sconces provided dim, flickering light, and Jessica counted 7 doors on each side before reaching her room. The key stuck in the lock, and Jessica had to jiggle it several times before the door finally swung open with a prolonged creak. The room was exactly what she expected. Dated floral wallpaper, a sagging double bed with a faded comforter, a boxy television that probably only got 3 channels, and a bathroom with avocado green tiles. But it was clean enough, and the bed looked soft. Jessica dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and immediately headed to the bathroom to brush her teeth and wash her face. The fluorescent light above the mirror buzzed when she flicked it on, and in its harsh glare, Jessica examined her reflection. She looked as tired as she felt, dark circles under her eyes, skin pale, hair a mess. She splashed cold water on her face and reached for the towel hanging by the sink. That's when she saw the message, written in the condensation on the mirror as if someone had traced a word with their finger. "Get out." Jessica's heart lurched. She spun around, but the bathroom was empty. She was alone. She looked back at the mirror, and the words were already fading as the condensation evaporated. "Just exhaustion," Jessica whispered to herself. "You're seeing things because you're tired." But her hands shook as she finished brushing her teeth. She turned off the bathroom light and returned to the bedroom, planning to just get into bed and sleep until dawn. Except now the television was on. Jessica froze. She hadn't touched it. The screen showed nothing but static, black and white snow with that distinctive hissing sound. But within that static, Jessica could swear she saw shapes. Faces. Mouths open in silent screams. She grabbed the remote from the nightstand and jabbed the power button. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Harder. The TV stayed on, the static growing louder, more aggressive. Jessica unplugged the television from the wall. The screen went black for a moment, and relief flooded through her. Then it flickered back to life, still showing static, still unplugged. "Okay, that's it," Jessica said aloud, grabbing her bag. "I'm getting out of here." She yanked open the door to the hallway and froze. The corridor had changed. Instead of the faded burgundy carpet and dim wall sconces, the hallway was now completely dark except for one door at the very end, a door that glowed with sickly green light leaking from under it. And standing in that hallway, between Jessica and the stairs, were people. At least, she thought they were people. They stood perfectly still, facing her, dressed in clothing from different eras. A woman in a 1950s dress, a man in a 1970s leisure suit, a teenager in 1990s grunge attire, and others. Their skin was gray, their eyes hollow black pits, and their mouths hung open in expressions of permanent horror. "Excuse me," Jessica tried to say, but her voice came out as a whisper. "I need to get past." The figures didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Jessica took a step forward, and all of them tilted their heads in unison, a mechanical, unnatural movement that made her stomach lurch. Then they began to move toward her, their feet making no sound on the carpet, gliding rather than walking. Jessica slammed the door and locked it, her breathing coming in panicked gasps. She grabbed her phone to call for help, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. Behind her, the television static grew louder, and now Jessica could hear something beneath it. Voices. Hundreds of voices, all talking at once, overlapping, creating a cacophony of terror. "Help us," the voices whispered. "Join us. Stay with us. You can never leave. You can never leave. You can never leave." The lights in the room began to flicker. The wallpaper started to peel, revealing something underneath. Not wall, but darkness, like looking into a void. The temperature plummeted, and Jessica could see her breath misting in front of her face. A knock at the door made her jump. 3 sharp raps. "Ms. Morrison." Earl's voice, muffled through the door. "Is everything all right? I heard noises." Jessica ran to the door, relief washing over her. "Oh, thank God. Something's wrong with this room. There are people in the hallway. I need to." She unlocked and opened the door. Earl stood there, but he'd changed. His skin was now completely gray, his eyes those same hollow black pits, his mouth stretched impossibly wide. Behind him, the hallway figures crowded closer, all of them reaching toward Jessica with skeletal hands. "Room 237 is special," Earl said, his voice now a chorus of voices, all the people who died here speaking through him. "It's where we take the ones who are running away, the ones no one will miss, the ones who check in alone." Jessica tried to slam the door, but Earl's hand shot out, impossibly fast, grabbing the edge. The door wouldn't close. More hands appeared, gray and cold, pushing the door open despite Jessica's desperate efforts. "We've been so lonely," the voices said. "The hotel is hungry. It needs to feed. And you're so tired, Jessica. Wouldn't you like to rest? Forever." Jessica abandoned the door and ran to the window, fumbling with the lock. It was painted shut, wouldn't budge. She grabbed a chair from the small desk and swung it at the window with all her strength. The glass shattered, and cold night air rushed in. Jessica didn't hesitate. She climbed through, cutting her hands on the remaining shards, and jumped. She landed hard on the overgrown grass below, the impact knocking the wind from her lungs. Above her, she could see figures crowding the window of room 237, their hollow eyes staring down at her. The entire second floor of the hotel was now filled with faces pressed against windows, dozens, maybe hundreds of them. Jessica scrambled to her feet and ran to her car, fumbling with her keys. She could hear them coming. Footsteps on the stairs, the front door of the hotel crashing open. She threw herself into the driver's seat, started the engine, and floored the accelerator, her tires screaming as she peeled out of the parking lot. In her rear-view mirror, Jessica saw the hotel figures standing in a line across the parking lot, watching her go. And Earl stood in front, his hand raised in a wave, that terrible smile on his face. Jessica drove through the night without stopping, her hands still bleeding from the glass, her whole body shaking. When dawn finally broke, she pulled over at a rest stop and searched on her phone for the Riverside Hotel. What she found made her blood run cold. The Riverside Hotel had burned down in 1987, killing 43 guests and staff. The fire had been ruled arson. The owner had locked the door from the outside and set the building ablaze, trapping everyone inside. Investigators believed he'd done it for the insurance money, but he disappeared before he could be arrested. The ruins had stood abandoned for years until being demolished in 2003. The land where the hotel had stood was now an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. Jessica looked at the GPS history on her phone, tracing back to where she'd stopped the night before. According to the map, she'd pulled off the highway in the middle of nowhere. No buildings, no structures of any kind for miles in any direction. But the cuts on her hands were real. The exhaustion was real. And when Jessica checked her wallet, she found she was missing the $40 she paid Earl for the room. She also found something else, a small brass key with a number 237 engraved on it, and a receipt printed on yellowed, decades-old paper. Riverside Hotel, room 237, paid in full, checkout, never. Jessica threw the key and receipt out the window and drove away, but she never forgot. And sometimes, late at night, she swears she can still hear those voices whispering from her television static. Come back. We're waiting. Room 237 is always available. She never drove that highway again.